a kind of pregame, they hold small lab sessions. About 4,000 people attend these, and there are usually close to 100 different sessions you can choose from. So the difference of being on the main stage versus a lab is significant. On the main stage, you speak at the Gwinnett Center to more than 13,000 people on a stage built out of LED lights that is U2 worthy. In the lab, you speak to at best a few hundred people in a conference room in an adjacent building that may have held a luncheon for Atlanta tax attorneys the day before. The main stage is an admirable goal, and having spoken at 3 labs in the past 2 years, it is one a few of my friends have wanted me to have achieved already. Meant as a compliment, as a go get 'em tiger, you're good enough to speak on the main stage, those words often get a little twisted in my head. What I hear when people ask me about the main stage is, what's wrong with you? Why haven't they asked you to speak on the main stage yet? Speaking at a lab is a failure. Didn't you already speak at a bunch of labs? If you're not careful, you're going to get stuck at lab level, and they'll never see you as a main stage guy. Although you might not have the ability to turn a positive question from a friend into a paragraph-long denouncement of your dream, you have experienced moments where you didn't feel like things were progressing fast enough. You've tasted a bit of the dream and thought, this is it. It's go time. I'm throwing caution to the wind. I completely agree with you. This is the march to the main stage. We need to get going. There are tons of really amazing things to do. But I want us to go slow. I want us to go small. I want us to get comfortable with being lab level. Why? Because it's the only real way to reach and stay on the main stage. And it starts with a plan. The plan myth. You would start today if you had a good plan. You would begin radically changing your life and quite possibly the lives of everyone around you if you only had a decent plan in front of you. Don't get me wrong. Plans are important. For everything from budgets to getting a business off the ground, a plan is a necessary part of any endeavor. But something weird happens when we use them as an excuse not to get started on our dream. When we think of obstacles that stand between us and how we want to live, we rarely would accuse our desire to have a plan as being one of them. A plan is always presented as a smart, logical step in whatever you want to do. Plans are mature. They are wise. They are critical. But like a lot of other good things in life, they can get corrupted. And if we look at them the wrong way, we start to believe the plan myth. The plan myth is a tiny voice that pipes up whenever we bump into people who are doing the things we would like to do. When confronted with someone else who is in the field or industry or dream we want for our own lives, we automatically assume that we are looking at the fruition of a long, detailed plan. We believe that years ago, on a blank wall like in the movie Ocean's 11, this person mapped out his entire life first. No, that individual had the vision and the dream to actually plan out what was going to happen, and now it is. Now it has come to pass. He did it with a plan, and we need one too. Until it's in place, there's really no point in getting started. We need to plan first and then act. We need to be meticulous and detailed in the way we architect the next month or year or decade. We will plan the work and then work the plan. We will read a book that has steps on the cover. We will attend a conference that promises a bulletproof business plan and immediate success. We will search career on Amazon. See, there are 115,656 books, and buy the 3 we think will most quickly deliver us a perfect plan. But then, awash in the fire hose spray that is the plan myth, we stop. It's overwhelming and we quit. We will give up before we've even really started. Why? Because plans are challenging, and it's difficult to try to reduce to steps the actions that take us from ordinary right now to extraordinary later. Where do we even start? Furthermore, in what format should the plan be? Should it be large and graphic, sprawling across our walls at home, or detailed and quiet, confined to an Excel spreadsheet? So we freeze, we pause, and we get stuck. But here's a secret, something I found a little surprising. The most successful people in the world often didn't start with a detailed plan. The most dramatic stories, the inspirations that move our hearts and our minds, are not born from people who mechanically followed the orchestrated steps of a plan. All too often, the stories that grip us are the lives where someone lived with passion long before they lived with a plan. Malcolm Gladwell, the best-selling author of books like Blink and The Tipping Point, discussed this one time. In a speech, he admitted, "I didn't plan or predict the success of Tipping Point. It took him a long time to get to that point. We might see the success and think Gladwell just laid out the steps carefully and then executed them, but he didn't. If that had been the case, he would have planned that success a long time ago. Why wait until you're in your 30s or 40s? Why not just become hugely successful right away? If plans guaranteed success, we would all plan to have it much earlier in life. A soccer player would never say, 'I scored that goal because I had a detailed plan.' He wouldn't say, 'You know how that corner kick came at me in that arc, and the defender timed his jump too early, and a late spring breeze made the ball rise at the last second, and the sun made the goalie lose it because of where he was standing? I planned that. That's why I was able to bounce it off the perfect part of my head into the only unreachable corner of the net.' No one would say that. No one could. So why then do we buy the plan myth when it comes to other areas of life? How can we possibly believe that there are too many variables in a soccer goal, but not so in life? Surely the average day carries more variables than the average soccer game. There are only 22 players on a soccer field. You might interact with hundreds of people today. Each one of those people adds an element of the unexpected to your day. Plan all you want, but you'll never be able to script every detail. That's not to say plans can't be great. They can. That soccer player planned his training. He planned his field position. He planned what type of strike he would make if the ball happened his way. He planned a lot of different things. But the plans didn't prevent him from acting. They gave him direction in acting. Don't let the plan myth paralyze you. A plan is not the first thing you need. Often, it is the third. The first thing you need is a passion. Like Malcolm Gladwell's unquenchable curiosity to explore the unexpected relationships between things. You need a passion that will drive you forward. You need a love, a hope, a dream that is yours. This is the first thing you need. Your why, as Simon Sinek suggests. The thing you've recovered. The second thing you need is practice. You need to try what you're interested in. You need to dip your foot in the water. You need to visit stores like the one you want to open. You need to read blogs like the one you want to start. You need to explore and test the waters. When asked about the secret of his success, Warren Buffett, the third richest man on the planet, said, "There's no place where we turn the switch. So much happens by accident. It does show the value of showing up every day." After you've identified your dream and made a habit of showing up every day, then you can start detailing your plan. Once you've got a little taste for what you want to do, a detailed plan can work miracles. Once you've got at least a sense of where you're headed, a plan can be incredibly valuable. When I started Stuff Christians Like in March 2008 in Atlanta, I didn't have a plan that in January 2011, I'd be a full-time author with the Dave Ramsey team, living in Nashville. I didn't write the word Nashville on a whiteboard and draw out my plan to get there. I had a passion to write, so I came up with a rough plan to do that. I had a loose plan that involved me writing on the internet on a regular basis. That's it. Then I practiced doing that on the blog for months and months. Hinge moments came, reshaping my passion and adding important details to my plan. Over time, I learned to plan out posts weeks in advance and set some goals I planned to hit. I stayed flexible to allow the plan to develop as I continued to practice. I once heard Involution.com's Kenny Rubin ask, "Why do we make our most important plans and decisions at the point in the project when we have the least amount of information?" His point was that we are at our most ignorant about what the future holds in a project on the first day. We don't know what obstacles or opportunities lie ahead. We often have the least amount of intel on what might happen. Still, we tend to lock ourselves into elaborate plans and then suffer the consequences later when circumstances refuse to cooperate. He illustrated his point by telling a story about his friend, an extreme skier. Rubin asked his friend if he planned his entire run from the top of the mountain. The friend told him he didn't. He planned about 4 moves out at a time. By the time he made it to his 4th move, he could see the terrain differently. There'd be a rock face he couldn't see from the top, or the light would have changed, and he could see ice in a different way now. The conditions radically changed by the time he got to the 4th move. So his plan did too. The conditions of your dream will change as quickly as that mountain face. New opportunities will come into view. Unexpected obstacles will arise, and while your passion will remain the same, your plan has to be flexible enough to accommodate them. This isn't just true of sarcastic blogs and extreme skiers. This principle works for people who want to build multi-million-dollar businesses too. When the leader of the company I work for, Dave Ramsey, started EntreLeadership, he followed the passion, practice, plan model I just described. As Dave's core business grew, he was extremely intentional about opening up his leadership playbook to his central group of leaders. He was passionate about pouring that experience into them. Once things really started moving in the company, other team members started asking questions about the whys of how Dave led the business. So he started teaching the whole team these EntreLeadership, part entrepreneur, part leadership principles. In one of his weekly training sessions, Dave looked up and noticed that he didn't recognize half the people in the room. His team members were bringing their friends, spouses, pastors, and neighbors to hear his material. He recalls thinking, "I'm no genius, but I think there may be a business in this material." That was the hinge moment when EntreLeadership became something else. What started as a way to train his own team grew into a way to train other leaders. Now, Dave has put thousands of business leaders from across the country through his live training, and he even wrote a book based on these principles. He had a passion, then he practiced it, then he planned it. Focus on your passion first. Your passion will always fuel your plan. Rarely will a plan fuel a passion. It will contribute. It will shape it. It will most certainly help it. But the biggest leaders, the most successful people, will tell you a passion for something drove them long before a plan did. David didn't know Cinderella. We love a good underdog story. We love watching someone much smaller and weaker defeat a much larger and stronger opponent. Great examples occur every spring as part of March Madness. The NCAA men's basketball tournament amplifies the drama by ranking each team and pitting the strongest against the weakest. The number 1 seed plays the number 16 seed. The number 2 seed plays the number 15 seed, and so forth. The 8 versus 9 game is nowhere near as captivating as the potential of an upset between a number 1 and a number 16. Those are our favorite games, and we turn out in droves to see if the Richmond Spiders can beat a powerhouse like Syracuse. We love these stories in part because we all want to be David. Regardless of your belief system, you can't watch sports and not hear this story referenced. David, a shepherd so small and insignificant he couldn't even fit in a set of adult armor, defeats a 10-foot-tall giant with a single stone and swings the entire future of a nation. It is a powerful story that connects on a lot of levels with people of all ages. But we've heard it so many times that we've probably missed some critical elements of it. We miss them because we get that story all tangled up with the Cinderella story. Both stories are often trotted out by sportscasters. In the same sentence they will say, "This game is a classic David versus Goliath. Samford University is a real Cinderella story." The two stories get wrapped up together into one homogenized underdog metaphor. Longshot goes up against the impossible odds and somehow wins. Beautiful story. The end. It makes for a great story, but when applied to real life, our desire for an underdog story quickly falls apart. There are a number of ways the David and Goliath story is very different from Cinderella, and they impact the way your dream is probably going to unfold. The hinge moment for Cinderella, a story of a young woman who falls in love with a prince and escapes her evil stepmother, is the ball. Wearing clothes given to her by her fairy godmother, Cinderella attends the king's gala event and dances with the prince. They fall in love, but she must leave by midnight. He is left holding a single glass slipper and a heart full of questions. The next day, one of the king's men comes to Cinderella's house in search of the mysterious girl. He slips on the glass slipper. They realize it is her. She marries the prince, and they live happily ever after. Kisses, hugs, the first step toward running the eventual Disney princess cartel is in place. The end. It's a sweet story, but it's also incredibly quick and easy. Cinderella may have spent years laboring under an evil stepmother, but after her hinge moment, things happen for her almost instantly. This is not David's story, which is a better frame of reference for the path you should expect when chasing your dream job. David might not have had an evil stepmother like Cinderella, but his dad, Jesse, showed him about as much love. When a prophet came to find the new king from among the sons of Jesse, David's father didn't even invite him in from the fields. Cinderella wasn't invited to the king's ball, and David wasn't invited to be king. But the similarities between the two stories start to break down there. Like Cinderella, David was deemed royalty soon after. But unlike Cinderella, David did not take his place for a long time. When the prophet Samuel couldn't find a king among David's many brothers, he asked Jesse if there was another son. David was soon anointed to become the king of Israel. It was a powerful moment. It was a life-changing moment. And then David returned to shepherding for several years. Hold up. Cinderella didn't sweat for years after her glass slipper moment. She was a princess in a matter of days. David was back to being a shepherd the next day. Maybe the same day. How long can it take to pour some oil on a kid's head? Regardless of being anointed as the king, he immediately returned to the solitary life of sheep and big skies and big dreams, with oil on his head, but a simple staff in his hand. It would be years before he'd ascend to the throne. He didn't hit main stage right away. Cinderella's hinge moment is about as dramatic as you get. In the Disney version, it starts with a group of adorable animals making her a dress. Mice literally band together to do a kind of Project Runway moment for her, but her stepsisters ruin it. They rip her dress up and mock her for thinking she could go to the ball. Into that moment steps a fairy godmother. She turns a pumpkin into a carriage, gives Cinderella a magical dress, and saves the day. The moment is glittery and loud like a Mariah Carey video. Cinderella goes to the ball, instantly wins over the prince, and they fall in love. Big drama, big fireworks, big finish. And that's how we want our dreams to go down. We don't just want Catalyst to call us and offer us a chance to speak at a lab to 45 people. We want an invite to speak on the main stage to 13,000. We don't want a local store to order 10 of the crafts we make. We want Walmart to call and order 10,000. We want Cinderella. We tend to get David. His story continues with Israel fighting a battle against the Philistines. The entire nation of Israel was terrified. A giant named Goliath taunted them from across enemy lines. When David arrived on the scene, his brothers mocked him. In a very stepsister moment, they tore him down and berated him for being there. That was David's big moment, another hinge moment, his version of the ball. Surely he was there for some dramatic reason. Surely his journey to that moment had started with something miraculous happening, like a pumpkin carriage and a bunch of singing, sewing sheep. But do you know why David was there that day? Do you know what he was doing when he encountered Goliath? He was delivering lunch to his brothers. The anointed king, the boy with God's hand on him, the future leader of Israel, was delivering sandwiches. I don't technically know if they were sandwiches. They were probably falafels, but that's beside the point. He wasn't attending a royal ball in a magical carriage, wearing curiously comfortable glass slippers. He didn't experience a wave of pomp and circumstance that propelled him into a magical moment. He brought lunch, something that was common for the youngest brother who was too young to do the real work on the front lines. I like that because so often developing our dream job is less about grand balls at grand castles and more about bringing lunch. It's a process of doing small but necessary things over and over again and letting the momentum build instead of getting decked out by a fairy godmother and being escorted to prominence in a blinged out carriage. I want to speak on the Catalyst main stage. I want to speak on platforms even bigger than that. But I know I need to do a lot of little things before I stand before Goliath. I want quiet big moments long before I have loud big moments. I want to have 2 people show up to one of my events and deal with the awkwardness of that before I try to lasso the moon. Not because I'm humble, something I have rarely been accused of. I just want to get great before I step onto a Goliath-sized playing field. I don't want to wow 100 people in an audience of 13,000. I want to reach all 13,000. You should too. Right now, the size of your dream probably outweighs your ability by at least tenfold. That's not a bad thing. I love that you've got a big dream right now. I love that you've got your own personal version of the Catalyst main stage. I think that's important. I just don't want you to get lost chasing a Cinderella story when what leads to a true happily ever after experience is a David story. Start small, start slow, get better along the way, and enjoy the gift of making many of your early mistakes without a major audience. Enjoy the gift of invisibility. Seth Godin clarifies this idea in his book, The Dip, when he quotes Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, about their early strategy. We knew that Google was going to get better every single day as we worked on it, and we knew that sooner or later, everyone was going to try it. So our feeling was that the later you tried it, the better it was for us because we'd make a better impression with better technology. So we were never in a big hurry to get you to use it today. Tomorrow would be better. There are many circumstances for which waiting is much more favorable than Cinderella success. Developing your dream job is one of them. For about a year before I started StuffChristiansLike.net, I wrote a blog called Prodigal John. On my best day, 200 people showed up and read what I wrote. On the average day, 50 people did. And a lot of those 50 people had the same last name I did, and were my mom. It was a quiet blog that by blogging terms wasn't very successful. If the goal of a blog is to grow an active, vocal community, then I was failing. Almost no one read it, and even though I worked as hard as I could, it stayed roughly the same size. Day after day, month after month, I wrote Prodigal John. At the time, I felt like it wasn't going anywhere. I felt confused that so few people knew about it. I didn't see the point of writing to a handful of people on a consistent basis. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But looking back on it, I needed that year. I needed the gift so few of us want, but most of us need. The gift of invisibility. When you start something new, you want it to be successful right away. You want it to grow and get visible quickly. But there are some problems inherent to visibility. For starters, it's harder to take risks when people are watching you. It's harder to experiment when many eyeballs are tracking with you. It's harder to remain innovative when people have a specific expectation about who you are and what you do. The temptation to play it safe increases with each new fan or follower. Suddenly, instead of just doing what you love to do, other people are speaking into it with their hopes and plans. People tend to get safe and small in the spotlight. Your honesty also seems inversely proportionate to the size of your audience. Your willingness to be open shrinks in proportion to the growth of your crowd. It's not that difficult to be transparent to a group of 10 readers. You realize that if you say something they don't like and they all stop supporting your dream, you can always start over. But if you've got 4,000 people buying your product or using the services of your company, you now have 4,000 reasons to keep things polished and pretty. Let's think about this whole honesty thing. It's the reverse of every Jerry Bruckheimer guy goes on a revenge streak movie. The tagline for those is usually something like, "The most dangerous man in the world is the man who has nothing to lose." The opposite of that, especially if you get some attention and visibility for your dream early on, is the safest man in the world is the man who has everything to lose. It's true. One of the costs of notoriety is safety. Anonymity allows you to make big, gross mistakes without everyone watching. Anonymity is the best creative lab because you've got nothing to lose. Anything is possible. Anything is on the table. There are no expectations to miss, no fans to disappoint, no follow-up fears. That's why famous writers are so terrified to follow up on success. I've heard mega best-selling authors confess that when they sat down to try to write their next book, they were overwhelmed with fear. The expectations, the hope that they would recreate the success of that first book, that they would catch lightning in a bottle again, were so high that they almost crippled them. You don't have that same issue if you are invisible and anonymous. You're free. As long as you are invisible, you have what Justin Bieber and Martha Stewart and LeBron James will never have again. The freedom to make mistakes on your own. That might not seem like much. That might seem more like a punishment than a gift sometimes. But it's true. Being out of the public eye is the perfect opportunity for you to get better at what you do before you go really big. I know that, culturally speaking, we often refuse to see invisibility as a gift. The sad thing is that you often don't learn that until it's too late. Eminem knows this. I read an article in a magazine about his return to the top from a battle with drug addiction. The article mentioned that one of the things he likes to do is drive back to the small house he grew up in, sit slouched in his car so people can't tell it's him, and reminisce about a time when life was simpler. He says, "It may sound corny, but I'll go by and try to remember how things were when we were in those houses. As time goes by, you might get content and forget things." He's concerned about losing that part of his life, that drive, now that he's no longer invisible and connected to that same hunger. You might never be Eminem, but someday, I promise you, you will treasure and value this time when your dream job was just a dream. A time when you are invisible and able to make big mistakes without big embarrassment. A time when things were simple and the canvas wasn't surrounded by thousands, even millions of onlookers awaiting each brushstroke. I think you're going to do great things. I think you probably already have, and having visibility is going to give you so many opportunities invisibility never could. But don't see invisibility as a punishment or a failure. See it as a gift. See it as something fleeting that is worth cherishing while it's still around. Don't rush through the one chapter that celebrities like Eminem long to stay connected to. Stay dangerous, stay bold, and for longer than you probably want to, stay invisible. Just to go off the script for a minute, I had an event that I put together. It was my first meet and greet, and it was at Catalyst in 2008. And I just asked them, can I use one of your rooms to have my fans come meet me in? And I was wildly drunk on my own ego and kind of awesomeness. And I thought there would be hundreds of people there. And so I printed up a bunch of quizzes on pieces of paper because I thought, not everybody will be able to bask in my awesomeness all at once. So for the people that are waiting in line, they'll have a quiz to fill out. And I was going to give everybody Skittles because I had an inside joke on the site about Skittles. And because it was around Halloween, it was easy to get the little bags for trick-or-treating. And so I had my wife get bags and bags. And she'd come home and I'd say, no, we need more Skittles. The crowd's going to be bigger, more Skittles. So I brought like 40 pounds of Skittles. I talked my in-laws into it, and they printed up 1,000 Stuff Christians Like stickers. And I set everything up in this room. And I was in that room for 90 minutes, and 2 people came. And one of them was a friend who just came to encourage me. So one person came, and it was a complete and utter failure. But I'm so glad to have had that experience at a time when the platform was so much smaller. And I got to make mistakes like that and learn from mistakes like that and ultimately share the story of mistakes like that with other people, because at the time I had the gift of invisibility. And that was so much better because my platform was small enough for me to take risks like that and do silly things like that without it costing me much. Get comfortable in Nebraska. My friend Rachel is just starting to chase her dream job. She wants to travel the country, speaking about finances to her generation of high school and college students. Her dad is Dave Ramsey, and he's built an incredibly large platform, doing the same for millions of people through his radio program. Rachel grew up watching him and learning the ropes. Now, at the age of 22, she's starting to get her own opportunities to speak to her own audience. And fortunately, it's going slowly. I talked to her about that one day. A van full of us were riding back from a sold-out event in Orlando that her dad had done in front of 9,000 people. It was a beautiful fall day there, and the energy of the experience was electric. And 24 hours later, Rachel would be in Nebraska. In the middle of November, she would be flying to rural Nebraska to speak to 30 people. And when we face moments like that, it's easy to get discouraged. Nobody comes to your event. Nobody donates to your charity. Nobody reads your blog. You can run a $10 million project at work, but when it comes to your dream job, you can't even get the freelance designer to finish your website. That's a tough pill to swallow. But like I told Rachel as she left the safety and size of her dad's platform, that's okay. These are the Nebraska years. These are the years when you'll travel 2,000 miles in cold temperatures to speak to fewer people than an NFL team. These are the years you'll throw away canvas after canvas because the colors refuse to cooperate. These are the years you'll teach 3 people how to swing dance when the studio space you rented would fit 80. These are the Nebraska years, and the sooner you quit being surprised by the hardship of them, the sooner you can survive. Not just survive, but actually thrive. With a rocky climbing the stairs enthusiasm, you can eventually start to see the odds stacked against you as exhilarating. That's how I felt when I wrote my first book. The blog I started with was based on another blog. My blog wasn't an original idea, and lots of people pointed this out to me. Leaders and well-respected industry insiders would say, "That's just the kid who ripped off the Stuff White People Like blog." And at first, I was hurt by that, in part because I wanted it to be easy. I didn't want to go to Nebraska. I wanted to leave the safety of my blog and find the exact same support as I stepped out to write a book. I didn't. I had events where 2 people showed up. I've watched hundreds of people pick up my book while I was standing at a signing table, shrug, and then walk away without saying a word to me. I've flown 3,000 miles to speak to 20 people, only to have some of them walk out in the first 3 minutes of my speech. But these are the Nebraska years. This is the gift of invisibility. This is what it means to start out small and remain patient. And the truth is that a few people is all you need to keep going. Those 30 people in Nebraska or the 2 people in the pottery workshop you put on in Cleveland matter. Infinitely so. When you first start out, expect the Nebraska years. Every dream goes through Nebraska. But we're not going to stay there, I promise. We're going to grow our dream bigger than the cornfields. We're going to take it to new places and new heights. And we're going to get there because we hustle. Chapter 6. There will be hustle. It must be awesome to have a full-time job like stuff Christians like. I would love that. That's something I heard for 2 years as I traveled around the country speaking at conferences or churches. The perception was that my job was simply to write a blog that referenced the Kardashians and the Old Testament in the same sentence, and then speak from time to time at fun places. I wish. Technically speaking, I have never taken my blogging full-time, and especially not then. At the time people thought I was a professional blogger, I was working in an IT department. I was using vacation days to go to conferences. Toward the end of each year, I would have to say no to almost everyone who asked me to speak because I ran out of days and couldn't steal from the Thanksgiving or Christmas jar. I'd do radio interviews from the car during lunch and schedule tweets so that I could try to avoid stealing time from work. I carved up my day into a million pieces, trying to fit a dream job around a day job. And it ultimately worked because I hustled. That's a funny word to me. When we started thinking about titling this book, one of the ideas we had was to call it Hustle. The name did pretty well in our brainstorming room until someone said, "That sounds too much like street walking or prostitution." Having long ago promised both my parents that I would never write a book about hookers, I relented. We changed the title. I love the title Quitter, but still think that a core element holding this entire book together is a need to hustle, to push harder than the other person, to dream further, to work longer and faster, and this is starting to sound a little like a Kanye West Daft Punk remix. Put it this way, I don't think any of the information in this book works without applying hustle to it. That's the key to this book and maybe even to your dream. The simple truth about hustle. I am related to Roy Acuff. If that means something to you, then congratulations. You've been to the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville and may or may not own a fiddle. Owning a fiddle, or at least an ear for fiddlin', greatly increases the odds of your hearing my last name and saying, "Acuff? Any kin to Roy?" He's known as the King of Country Music and has a theater named after him at the Grand Ole Opry. When people ask me if we're related, I have one joke I always do, and it's not that funny, so I'm not sure why I keep doing it. I always say, "We're related, but not so close that I don't have to work." Then we laugh a little, and I inevitably say, "He's my 3rd or 4th cousin. It's not like I've got bluegrass money." I think that joke might have been a C, maybe C+ quality the first time I used it, but it has significantly deteriorated each day I've lived in Tennessee. People keep asking me about my cousin Roy, but I wish they were asking me about my cousin Charlie. Charlie isn't really my cousin. He married my wife's cousin, which makes him one of those relatives with whom you never bother to figure out the calculus-like equation of how you're related. But Charlie is easily my favorite cousin, and I promise you have one too. This is the relative you always try to sit next to at family gatherings. This is the